Being late to important meetings was never her thing, but today was an exception. She was on her way to meet someone who openly hated her, but she still had to do it. Reaching the door of the cafe where the meeting was supposed to happen, the girl paused for a second, but she didn't lose her nerve. Lately, she'd already been facing people who criticized her left and right anyway. Walking into the noisy cafe, she spotted the woman she was supposed to meet, who had clearly been waiting for her for quite some time. Looking at the girl, the woman thought she herself might have made things awkward by suggesting this private meeting. The girl fixed her hair and gave the woman a strange look. That sly fox. She thought that the woman thought of her exactly that way. Honestly, the girl herself wasn't thrilled about such a sudden visit without any arrangements. The woman watched her and couldn't understand why she suddenly turned the other way. The woman had no idea where the girl was going. She started to get furious. She was practically boiling. She called out to Hong Juai and thought, she really is a fox. When the girl entered the cafe, she suddenly felt like having coffee, so she went to order it. Approaching the table, the girl greeted the woman and called her mom. She explained she had just recently come back, then asked how she was doing. The woman asked why she was so late and mentioned that she'd called her. The girl silently took out her phone and put it on the table. The girl got up and said she'd step away for a moment. She noticed the woman already had coffee, so she decided to get one for herself too. The woman was shocked by her behavior and didn't even know what to say. Then she asked if people don't usually order drinks ahead of time for meetings like this. What a pushy attitude, the woman thought. Holding the coffee cup in her hand, Juai thought, great, I messed up again. And the woman noticed something shiny on her finger. The woman pointed at her hand and asked in surprise, is that a ring? The girl showed her hand with the ring on her finger and said Junwon gave it to her. Then the woman asked if they had matching rings. While the girl was thinking about how to respond, the woman asked what was going on with her face. And if that ring was an engagement ring. The girl simply nodded. And the woman held her head, not knowing what to say, thinking, fine, let's just pretend it's a couple of ring. Then she exploded yelling, who gets married like this? Who even gave you permission? She shouted, I guess Junwon doesn't need his mom's approval. And the girl calmly replied, you guessed right. The girl said she tried so hard to resist, but Junwon kept insist. The woman screamed, what are you, a puppet? If you don't like something, you should say it. Or do you just do everything he tells you to? The girl explained she didn't refuse because she didn't like the ring. She felt guilty toward her, and she called her mom again. The woman, outraged, shouted, is that it? You have nothing else to say to me? She screamed that she hated the girl. She'd never even thought about accepting her as a daughter-in-law. The girl didn't react, then gave a faint smile and agreed with the woman's words. The woman looked confused, stunned that the girl agreed with her, then yelled, stop mocking me! And Juai said she didn't think she could ever change how the woman saw her. She'd made it clear from the very beginning. She called her mom again and said she'd still waited, trying to show her best side. But the woman yelled, I'm not your mom! And the girl replied, then, Junwon's mom. The woman shouted for her to stop joking around and said it seemed like meeting her was getting too easy now. But the girl smiled and said she'd been so nervous she had to take a calming pill, and that when she got home, she'd probably need something for her stomach too. And the woman grew even angrier, clenched her fists, and asked if she was acting like this because of Junwon. The girl said they still had things to talk through and asked if she could explain, and that's when the woman completely lost it. Looking around, the woman thought about how she used to know exactly how to behave in public. And now she was yelling over something so small. Then, smiling, the girl told her the news. She and Junwon had decided to live together. The woman was outraged, her whole body trembling with anger. She yelled that this couldn't be happening, but the girl calmly said it was only temporary. The woman jumped up, emotions overflowing, and grabbed the coffee cup from the table. She shouted that the girl was shameless. How dare she talk to her like that? And then threw the cup of coffee right into her face. Hong Juai sat silently, staring at the woman who kept trying to humiliate her, as coffee slowly dripped down her face. The woman yelled that she'd asked her not to call her mom and demanded to know what she had to do to make the girl disappear. She said her son had never spoken with such confidence before, and she couldn't believe anything would stop him now. Pushing back her chair, the woman stood up and yelled, when elders speak, you listen. Suddenly, a man walked up to their table, pointed at the spilled coffee, and asked his mother if she had done this. The girl looked at him in shock, then asked how he'd ended up here. He looked a little angry. The mother was just as shocked. She hadn't expected to see Junwon at the cafe. She gave the girl a sharp look and shouted, you told him about this meeting, didn't you? Trying to stop her son, she wanted him to listen and explain everything, but he wouldn't hear a word of it. Then the man walked over to the girl and told her to get up. She tried to defend his mother, saying it was fine, she hadn't meant it, and that his mom was already upset enough. He looked at her seriously and said, "If you don't get up, I'll make you." The man's mom flinched and started yelling, asking how he could talk to her like that and why he was speaking to her this way. The girl was shocked too. She didn't understand anything and asked why he was so angry. What had upset him so much? Junwon didn't say a word. The girl looked at him closely and thought, what's wrong with him? It's just a contractual relationship. A month ago, she walked up to her door and saw a strange box lying on the floor. When she opened it, she found a lot of branded stuff inside. For a moment, she hesitated, her curiosity taking over. Opening one of the bags, she was once again surprised to see he'd taken another bra. Looking through the things inside the box, she thought he must have some kind of breasts obsession. Though honestly, her butt wasn't bad either. She crouched by the door, glanced around, and thought maybe it was time for her to move out. Once inside her apartment, the girl locked the door. She was a little scared to be alone. She stared at the box again and decided that even if she moved out, she had to get revenge. Then she grabbed her phone and called her brother, saying, "Get up." She told him that the creep had dug through her package again. And this time, he'd taken a Victoria's Secret bra from the set. The guy got out of bed and said this was a straight-up violation and that she must be furious. Barely awake, he joked, "So he's not into butts at all? What kind of weirdo doesn't take panties too?" The guy was her brother, so of course they thought alike. Then she promised him 300,000 won. He was shocked and asked if she was really willing to give him that much. He told her to wait while he checked his schedule. Then he suggested Friday at 11 a.m. since they'd have a long break between classes. She asked if he was planning to bring his friends. He said, "Yeah, we need strength in numbers. Besides, they're all huge." The guy said that this pervert would apologize as soon as he found out that they were from the physical education department. He also added that his sister might call it the perfect synergy of years of experience and the idea of earning pocket money. Juai said it sounded like a contract, but he seemed to like it. And since his friends were all massive guys, she agreed. He said, "That's not just good. That's perfect." "Write him a note." She said okay and tossed the item into the trash. Then she sat at the table, took a sheet of paper and a pen, and started writing. The note said she wanted to meet him and would wait at 11 a.m. on Friday at the cafe. The girl was thrilled. After rereading the note, she said, "We'll meet soon." And then he's done for. The next day, as usual, the city streets were packed with people going about their day. As Junwon was crossing the street, his phone rang. When he answered, Mother told him the girl had matched her schedule to his. And she asked why he already didn't like this girl when he hadn't even met her yet. Crossing the street, he kept talking and said, "Why would anyone think I'd like her?" Mother said he barely had any free time during the week, so she'd chosen a spot near his office. 30 minutes would be enough. They'd already checked her background, family, looks, and personality. All he had to do was show up. Junwon told her not to pull a stunt like that again. He said he wasn't to blame for his brother's divorce, and that wasn't a reason to rush him into marriage. But the voice on the phone told him when he's told to go on a date, he should just go. Isn't it great that it's at a cafe across from work and not some fancy place? He kept walking down the street, annoyed, and said, "Why make trouble for other people?" The woman replied he'd recognize her instantly because she was beautiful. He started to remember the photo. His mother kept talking, saying the girl's dad had taught at a tech institute. Her mom had played the cello, and she'd grown up in a big family with great manners. The man pulled out his phone and looked at the picture. The girl had long black hair. The woman said she was part of the Seoul Symphony Orchestra. His mom said she really liked the girl, but personality and character mattered more than looks. "The last daughter-in-law from a good family was a disappointment," she added, "and I won't make that mistake again." She said if he didn't like this one, she'd find another. Mr. Choi recommended her, and I agreed. "But the final decision's yours. Isn't that perfect?" she said, and hung up. The man walked into the cafe and checked the time. 30 minutes would be enough. It had taken him 10 minutes to get here, 10 to get back, leaving only 10 minutes for the meeting. He looked around for a girl sitting alone, but the place was packed with people chatting. He thought someone nearby said they'd seen a girl like that inside. He stiffened a bit when someone commented about his face. Some girls sitting nearby said he had a great natural look and hadn't done any plastic surgery. Passing them, he overheard them saying they'd been consulting on plastic surgery for 8 years, but guessed he was doing just fine without it. Finally, at the far end of the room, he spotted a girl sitting alone at a table. He remembered what his mom said about recognizing her right away. The girl sat alone with a cup of coffee, looking around as if waiting for someone. She was stunningly beautiful. He walked up to her table and said they'd agreed to meet today. She stood up and confirmed it. She smiled and told him she was surprised he actually came. She'd been worried they wouldn't meet. Junwon studied her carefully and admitted he thought he wouldn't show up for this blind date. She just smiled and invited him to sit. They both sat down. She told him she hadn't expected him to really come, but here they were. And he was even more handsome than she'd imagined. After a while, he silently checked his watch and said he had to leave. He'd come during work hours. Unexpectedly, she asked how he felt looking at her, but he didn't answer. She stared at him, her eyes shimmering, thinking maybe his heart would start beating faster. Her face lit up as she gazed at him, but he stayed silent. Then she asked if he had a photo of her. He said he did, then thought, why ask when she obviously had his photo too? The man was completely shocked when the girl suddenly asked what he'd been doing with her photo. He honestly thought this woman was out of her mind. The girl kept smiling, and he thought to himself that maybe his mom had picked a crazy girl on purpose. The girl suddenly stood up and demanded to know what he'd been imagining while looking at her photo. Watching how she acted, the man started to get a little nervous and thought she really might be insane. He quickly got up from his chair, saying it was time for him to go, but the girl suddenly asked if he liked it. He gave her a confused look, but she repeated the question, asking again if he liked it. Junwon asked what exactly he was supposed to like, but the girl yelled that he played so beautifully. He couldn't understand what on earth she was talking about. She clapped her hands, laughing, and said, "See? He's so good at pretending to be normal. So sneaky, too." The girl said it was all clear now. He saw her in person, and of course he wants to meet again, because he's blushing and doesn't know how to act. She said she understood him. She's met people like him before. She added that if he thought putting on a serious face would cover up his past, he was wrong. He might look normal, but in reality, he steals other people's stuff. The man got furious. He had no idea what she was talking about, and demanded to know what exactly he supposedly stole. Suddenly, two huge guys came up and grabbed him by the arms. He had no clue what was happening. The guys shouted that they finally caught him, calling him some kind of pervert. He didn't understand why they were calling him that, but they kept yelling that he was a strong freak and held him down even harder. The girl stood up, apologized to everyone for the noise, and said these were her younger brothers who'd come to help her. Then she pointed at the guy and said she was terrified of this man, so scared she couldn't even speak, and that he'd been tormenting her for a long time. She called him a stalker, and people around started whispering, shocked by the scene. The crowd kept murmuring while the girl went on, saying her underwear had been stolen several times and someone had taken photos of her without permission. She then began to cry, saying her packages had been opened and tampered with. The cafe manager came over and said they should call the police, but the girl refused, saying it would cause too much trouble. The man started struggling, trying to break free, and he also said they should call the police, but the guys holding him called him shameless. He tried to jerk away, but they shouted that it didn't matter if he was athletic. They were all physical education majors. They grabbed him even tighter, yelling to hold him down harder, and then slammed him against the table. As they pressed him down, his wrist hit the table. There was a sharp crack. His watch broke. The cafe manager looked furious at the chaos, but the girl said they'd leave soon and apologized. He said it was fine and that he was sorry this happened. Then she turned back to the man and mockingly asked how he was feeling and if he wasn't ashamed of himself. She leaned in close and whispered that even if she filed a report, there wouldn't be enough evidence. No real threat, nothing the police could do. That's why she'd come up with her own solution. She explained that because she looked weak, people thought they could easily mess with her. Junwon glared at her in outrage. The girl said she came from a place without streetlights, where people grow tomatoes, dig potatoes, and harvest peppers. That's the kind of woman I am, she added. She asked if he'd ever lived somewhere with moose around. It's wild boar season, she said. Better be careful. She grew up hearing warnings like that. Then she started laughing and asked if he knew how a giant red pepper grows, showing its huge size with her hands. The man shouted, "How would I know that?" "I'm not your stalker. You'd better fix this mess." Hongjuai turned to her brothers and said, "See? His story never changes. A stalker would never admit he's a stalker." He tried to explain himself, but she sarcastically said, "Wow, what a great act." Then another girl walked up from behind and asked, "Is that really Do Junwon?" She asked the newcomer who that was, and the girl said she recognized him and looked genuinely surprised. The man was shocked but relieved someone finally recognized him. He said, "Yeah, that's me." The new girl, still surprised, asked what the hell was going on. Ju-ai tried to explain, saying she clearly didn't know who this man was. The newcomer tried to explain that he was actually her blind date. They must have gotten it all wrong. Hong Ju-ai began rambling about the peaceful village where she grew up, where there wasn't even a shadow to be found. She thought her mom and dad were probably lying in the living room right now, escaping the blazing midday sun. And as they look at the red peppers she planted, they remember her face. Their daughter, the one they're so proud of. And now the same girl sat across the table, bowing her head in shame before a man she barely even knew. The man asked if she had anything she wanted to say to him. He looked devastated and deadly serious. The girl lowered her head, ashamed of what she'd done in the cafe, and began apologizing to him. Then Park Gunung, Ju Seok's friend, whispered in her ear, "Look at his watch. It looks really expensive." The girl tried to avoid the topic, but realized they were in trouble. She remembered being told since childhood to live smart like a fox, and she used to reply that she'd take that as a compliment. She thought this mess might affect her brother too. Yes, she needed to be the fox. She nervously bit her finger and confessed that a stalker had been following her for weeks, and her brother had brought friends to protect her. She explained that she had texted the stalker to meet her at the cafe, and when this man approached her like he already knew her, she assumed he was the stalker. The girl tearfully admitted she'd been too scared to think straight and apologized. She begged him not to blame her brother because it was all her fault. When Juseok heard her words, he tried to protect her and said that it was all his fault and only his, asking her to stop blaming herself. The girl stepped hard on his foot and told him to stop talking nonsense and stay quiet. Her brother was in pain and didn't say anything else, while the girl kept insisting it all happened because she was so terrified. She started crying and said it was entirely her fault, asking how she could make up for the damage she caused him. The man thought for a moment, then asked if she had really been that scared. Ju-ai replied, "Very, very much." Looking at him, she thought he was having an internal conflict, that he actually bought her story. Junwon looked back at her and said, "Who's supposed to be afraid of who here? After everything you've told me about your life? Those stories about peppers and hunting wild boars, jumping on someone without even checking who it is first? How is that not violence?" he said. The girl got offended and said, "You can't call that violence." I mean, where have you ever seen someone ask a stalker for their name? You only ask when you already know it. He asked her why she was trying to convince him now, but she denied it and said she was just trying to explain everything honestly. Just imagine how we would have introduced ourselves," she said. "I'd ask, 'Are you really my stalker?' Then offer you a seat." So of course the only logical step after that was to scream, "Attack!" Right? Time. Money, she thought as she looked at him. And that face, the kind that makes you speechless. She figured if he had everything, he probably lived a life where he never had to be kind. People adored him anyway. He must have plenty of gorgeous women around him already, she thought. A cute face won't work on him. He'll probably make me pay for that watch. She told herself not to lose hope. She could pay him back by working every day without a break, like a bull or an ant. The other girl who came to meet him asked when their conversation would end. The man told her to wait a little longer. He said, "This isn't an order, but I really can't keep talking like this. I'll need your number." The girl was shocked. He then asked if she wasn't planning to contact him, handing her his phone so she could type it in. She eventually agreed, took his phone, entered the number, and said she would pay him back. She just needed some time. He asked for her name to save the number, and she replied, "Hong Ju-ai." When the man stood up, she looked at him in surprise. She hadn't realized before how tall he was. He said, "You guys have an interesting way of dealing with stalkers. Maybe next time you'll find another way." She replied that she knew what she did was reckless and thanked him for the advice. She thought, no one should have to endure anything like this, but he probably doesn't know that. Outside, the guys wished her a safe trip, and she thanked them, telling them to get home safely too. And as she walked with her brother, he asked if she'd done it on purpose. She didn't understand what he meant, and he said he was talking about the phone number. She froze, realizing she'd given that man her old number, the one she'd just changed. The girl screamed, grabbing her head. She couldn't believe she'd actually given him the wrong number. And now there was nothing she could do. The man was supposed to meet someone else at that cafe anyway. How could I forget that I changed my number just last week? She thought, frustrated. She lightly punched her brother's shoulder and said he should have stopped her. but he said he thought she did it on purpose. She was panicking, wanting to run back and tell him she'd made a mistake, but her brother tried to calm her down. He said it was over anyway and that even if she went back, he was probably already gone. At first, she didn't want to listen and considered running back, but eventually stopped and heard him out. Hong Ju-seok told her she secretly didn't mind giving him wrong number and asked if she didn't want to pat herself on the back. She flinched and asked, "For what?" He raised his hand and said, "Your subconscious hand wrote down the old number." She was in despair, insisting it was an accident, just a stupid mistake. Her brother said, "Even if he comes looking for you, you're honest. If I hadn't asked, would you have realized you gave the wrong number?" She admitted, "No." He put his arm around her shoulder and said, "If you meet again, offer compensation one more time." That guy's really something else. He added that judging by the look of him, that man probably had tons of watches like that at home. Remembering him, Ju-ai started to cry and said, "Yeah, he really is something else." She thought she'd love to have 100 watches like his at home. He's rich. He probably doesn't even care about one broken watch. Yuseok said the road they were on led to a dead end, so Hong Ju-ai decided she had to work hard to pay it back, even if she didn't know whether he'd return. She was confused why it suddenly felt for him. Her brother asked if she knew his number, where he worked, or how to contact him, but she said no. "Then all we can do is earn the money," her brother said. "That's all we can do for now." He wished her a good day at work, reminding her she was going to the baseball game tomorrow. He said once she went, everything would ease up. She looked at him in surprise. "Really?" The guy replied that she should go to the game and just forget about everything that had happened until that man showed up. Meanwhile, Jun-won was already at the office. After the meeting ended, he told everyone to return to their tasks. He stood up and headed back to his desk to keep working. And then the company's managers, Heo Min-jae and Ho Hui-jo, walked up to him in high spirits, clearly eager to talk about something. They finally asked him if he remembered their plan to go to the baseball game that day. The director said he did. One of the managers snapped his fingers and asked if maybe after the game, the director would have a drink with them. Jun-won refused. Then the managers asked if he would just watch the match and leave, and the guy replied yes. The managers were thrilled that the director wouldn't be joining them afterward. Since they'd already dealt with the strongest opponent, they could now go somewhere to hang out with some girls. But after all the effort they'd put into building a friendship with the director, he didn't want to go with them. They thought with his godlike face and physical strength, he'd charm every woman in that bar. They figured they should just get rid of him right after the baseball game anyway, but he'd already said he was leaving later. He just didn't like crowded places, and he watched baseball simply because he loved the sport. Then Ho Hui-jo ran up to the director to make sure once and for all. On days like today, when he was in a black shirt, it was nearly impossible to talk to him. When a man dresses all in black, he gives off a Grim Reaper vibe. As the director walked down the hallway, female employees passing by greeted him, but all he did was give a slight nod. Ho Hui-jo practically begged him to just watch the game and leave, promising to be completely loyal again after today. While walking down the corridor, he ran into a man who greeted him and held some unknown little box in his hands. The manager told the man that this was Mr. Park from Lano Watch and asked if the director had bought another watch. The man shook his head and said he'd come about a repair this time. Ho Hui-jo asked the director if something had broken. He replied that the watch was on his desk. Mr. Park examined the watch, paused for a moment, and said the damage was worse than he thought. Ho Hui-jo shouted in shock, asking how that could have happened. The man said the only consolation was that the director had such a rare model in his collection at all. The watchmaker carefully picked it up and said he understood the director was a collector, so they'd do their best, but judging by the damage, they'd have to take it in for inspection because he couldn't evaluate it on the spot. Jun-won asked if they could take it today because he'd planned to bring it on his business trip to Geneva. The manager was shocked and asked how he could have broken it and when it happened. The director answered it was yesterday and that it was a long story. The manager asked if he had done it himself, but the director replied, "Hardly." Then the manager said he should demand compensation because those watches don't cost pocket change. Jun-won paused for a moment and then, with a sad look on his face, said the girl had broken it accidentally. Ho Hui-jo was stunned to hear that a girl had broken the watch. He wondered how angry or forceful she must have been. He asked the director if he'd be able to get compensation from her, but the man said he didn't even know. The manager was shocked that he didn't know. The director told him he hadn't even thought about it. The manager regretted asking. He said he was going back to work and left. Meanwhile, Jun-won thought about how he still hadn't contacted her. He figured it would feel awkward to call about compensation, so it was probably better to reach out once the repair bill came in. He thought about how determined she was. Even in a situation where she could owe a huge amount of money, she acted confident and handled herself well. He thought that if he were in her position being tested, it would have been a win. Then he remembered the phone. Picking up his phone, he began searching for the girl's number. Among all the contacts in his phone book, he spotted the one saved as Watch. Finding her number, the man was surprised to see that her profile picture was something completely incomprehensible. He stared at the profile picture for a long time, trying to figure out what it was and what this girl did. The next day, the girl met up with her friend, who asked if she'd gotten a message about her weird profile photo. The girl was surprised, and her friend showed her the phone. Then she said she'd sent her a screenshot and asked if that was really her picture. Her friend asked if she'd given Yeonsung the new number since they studied in the same department, but the girl said they already talked too often. Her friend said that Yeonsung had been annoying even in college and praised her for not giving the number. No one needed unrequited love drama. Hong Ju-ai looked at her phone and admitted the picture really did look like a pyramid scheme. She stared at the phone again, surprised, wondering if this meant the man with the watch hadn't been able to reach her. Sitting at her computer, the girl thought about the saying, "Someone who's done something wrong can't sleep peacefully." She hadn't closed her eyes the whole night out of worry. The girl asked Jung-in if she currently wore Rolex watches and how much the repair would cost if one were broken. Choi Kyung-eun was her co-worker at the pharmacy. Her friend was surprised and said she'd never broken one. The girl said she was just curious since someone she knew also had a Rolex, and his had been broken so badly it couldn't be repaired. And then that acquaintance demanded 10 million won in compensation. She was shocked by the amount and took a deep breath. The girl then asked her friend how much it would cost if the watch was worth over 100 million. Young-eun was stunned and said, "Then it's better to just die." Her friend added that if the original price was 200 million, the value only goes up with time, and told her to think about whether a person with such a watch would just let it go. Hong Ju-ai thought, "There's no way he'll let this slide. He'll definitely make me pay for it. Someone who wears a watch like that won't forget." Bori and Ina worked at the pharmacy, and as she passed by, the girl overheard them talking about how the handsome CEO would be coming today to watch the match but wouldn't stay to drink. They said their floor and the pharmacy were in completely different corners, so they probably wouldn't even run into him. They only ever saw the director in the underground parking lot. Then a coworker asked if she'd ever seen that construction company CEO from the 9th floor, but she said she walked everywhere and never went to the parking lot. Still, she was curious why everyone was making such a fuss. Jiho, the only guy in the pharmacy, said that even he, another guy, had to admit that man was born perfect. The girl asked if he was really that perfect, and Young-in said it was a shame for those who'd never seen him. But she didn't recommend him because he was like a cold wind. The CEO was always expressionless. If someone greeted him first, he'd just nod. That was it. "But it would be different with you," her friend told her confidently. "You're so pretty." But the girl asked, why would anything change? "A lot of people don't even like me." Then she overheard a coworker saying this would be the perfect chance to see Do Jun-won, and hearing his name made the girl flinch. Then Ju-ai suddenly turned around and asked in surprise what she had just said at the very end. Bori repeated that the CEO's name was Do Jun-won. The girl simply couldn't believe it. She remembered the name of the man from the cafe whose watch she had broken. She was shocked and thought, could it really be that this man is the director from the 9th floor? When she arrived at the match, the girl saw a huge stadium with a giant scoreboard. The scenery around was breathtaking. She thought his name was Rare, and then realized his last name was Rare too. But there was no way he'd come out drinking. Since it was the first company event, he decided not to ruin the vibe and just watch the game before heading out. She then thought that tomorrow she'd start putting up posters near the pharmacy to find that man. If she made the first move, maybe he'd understand when they meet. But then Ju-ai suddenly heard her name. Snapping out of her thoughts, she saw a ball flying toward her at full speed. She flinched, but to her own surprise, caught the ball with her hand. Everyone around said it was really cool. And then she quickly stood up and threw the ball back with sharp movements, wondering why she'd even caught it in the first place. But the ball came back again and hit her straight in the face. The girl screamed, and everyone burst out laughing. The man sitting next to the director started laughing and filming it on his phone. He said they'd shown Ju-ai on the big screen. She was a star now. And the director looked surprised and asked why he was filming it, but the guy said he'd show it to her later. "This has to be saved as a memory," he added. Junwon glanced at the girl and repeated her name several times. He felt like he had seen her somewhere before. Hyo Min-jae said the director probably didn't know her. She was from the pharmacy on the first floor. Junwon looked at her more carefully and asked if she really worked in their building. After the game ended, everyone went outside, and Bori told her to check what she'd just found on her phone. As they were walking down the street, her friend read out loud that the girl had refused a home run. "That's the girl who got hit in the nose." Ju-ai thanked her for telling her. Her friend laughed and said that actually worked in her favor. With that bruise, everyone could tell her nose was real. They laughed loudly, and Ina reminded them they'd agreed to meet in front of the chicken restaurant. When they arrived at the restaurant, they ran into the guys walking toward them and greeted each other. Minji, walking closer, asked if the girls had been waiting long. He seemed genuinely happy to see them. Ju-ai was stunned when she saw him. She couldn't believe her eyes. Could it really be him? Her co-workers next to her said the CEO had also come. She turned around and thought that if she'd known he was coming, she would have run away long ago. Lowering her head, she wondered if there really was a god in this world. And it seemed maybe there was. Then she heard the girls greeting the director. She thought, God sent this man so the sinner could pay for their sins. This man is like the Grim Reaper in human form. Do Junwon notice the girl hiding her face? He walked closer and, seeing Ju-ai, asked if it was her again. She looked at him and said what a coincidence it was that they worked in the same building. He asked how her nose was doing. She replied that everything was fine, even though she was already planning to leave. Money is money, she thought. But more than anything, I'm embarrassed I gave him the wrong phone number. She decided she'd come up with an excuse later. The girl was in such a rush she didn't even notice a car approaching as she crossed the street. And the man saw it, shouted to her, then quickly grabbed her and pulled her close, saving her just in time. He guided her to the side of the road and asked if she was okay. Their friends, who had been frightened, all rushed toward them. He noticed her nose was badly hit, but Ju-ai insisted she was fine. He moved closer and asked her to let him check her nose. It looked like she had hurt it again, but she said it was fine and thanked him. Then the girl saw her nose and screamed that she needed a tissue. Junwon told her to just sit still. He took a tissue and gently began wiping away the blood, saying it looked like she'd hit it pretty hard. Hong Ju-ai felt awkward and kept saying she was fine. But he suggested she press the tissue against her nose, and their coworkers tried to help. The man grabbed a huge wad of tissue and started pressing it to her nose. She thought, oh God, please let this just be a dream. After everything that happened, the guys and girls went to a cafe, sat down at a big table, and ordered drinks. Ju-ai thought to herself that she was now sitting across from the amazing owner of that watch, the one her brother said she'd never meet again. It turned out he worked on the 9th floor of the same building where she worked. He had even taken over a space that wasn't offered to financial companies. Then she grabbed her phone and typed a message. If I disappear, my debt will pass on you. Good luck, bro. Feeling lost, she just went along with everyone. But if things were like this, she decided to explain everything and give the director her real phone number. The only problem was, she didn't know when to do it. He was listening very attentively to his employees. And just when she was about to start the conversation, her friend handed her some food saying it was delicious. As Ju-ai tried to take a bite, she still couldn't figure out how to start talking to him. Ho Hui-jo, sitting nearby, tried to ask the director something, but he replied there was no need. After a while, he asked if the director liked Hong Ju-ai. He'd seen how worried he was about her. Junwon turned away and said she had gotten hurt because of him. But the guy asked if he just wanted to help, since usually he didn't worry about people who got injured. Then he said Ina had told him that Ju-ai spends her days in the pharmacy rejecting guys who confess their love to her. Then Junwon asked who Ina was. Hui-jo replied that she was dating Hyo Min-jae, the youngest in their company, and worked the front desk at the pharmacy on the first floor. The guy said that lots of guys come to the pharmacy to see Ju-ai, bringing her gifts and sweets. And there was also that doctor from the plastic surgery clinic on the 5th floor. She turned him down too. In fact, she turns down everyone who confesses their feelings to her. But the director just stared at him. His gaze was cold and serious. He didn't say a single word. The guy thought maybe he'd said something wrong. It probably meant the director didn't come here because of Ju-ai. The girl kept eating the spicy food, but her friend told her to stop, or her nose would hurt even more. Looking at the director, the girls asked if he was always this quiet. They were surprised at how little he spoke. Hui-jo said that's just how he is, so don't get scared. The director's always calm and serious. He explained that the director Do must be in a bad mood today. The girl tilted her head, wondering why. Then Ho Hui-jo started talking about how yesterday someone broke his watch. Junwon glanced at him, trying to calm him down. The girl's friend gasped when she heard about the broken watch and asked if he knew who did it. Maybe it was Hongju-ai, she thought. Then told the director he should make that girl pay compensation. Jung-un looked at the girl and whispered softly, "Wait, are they talking about you?" The guy said the director never lectures women about their manners. If someone pisses him off, no matter their age or gender, he doesn't say a word. He just makes them regret their entire life. But if nothing bad happens, he's actually kind and fair. He's got a good personality. The guy repeated that, then winked. But the director shot him a furious look and said he'd had too much to drink. The guy laughed and said he was fine, but that the director shouldn't be calling any girls. He told the director to report it to the police, but Junwon told him to shut up. Then the director looked at Ju-ai closely and thought, wait, is she crying? She really was. The girl quickly stood up and said she'd step out to the bathroom for a minute. In the bathroom, she splashed water on her face, thinking the spicy food was enough to drive her insane. Why do I look so weird in front of him? She thought. Her eyes were watering from the spice. Today of all days, the director had to see me like this. She grabbed her head, as if punching an innocent man and breaking his watch wasn't enough. She still went to that baseball game like nothing happened. She forced herself to think of a way to apologize and calm him down, but her brain screamed it was done for. Suddenly, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was her mom calling. Her mom asked if they were having fun. Hearing her voice made Ju-ai feel warm inside. She asked if her mom wasn't asleep yet and told her to go rest. But her mom said she was just about to sleep, then remembered Ju-ai said she'd be out with her friends from the pharmacy. Ju-ai told her they were hanging out with people from other companies in the same building, and that one of the girls introduced them to her boyfriend's coworkers. Mom said that sounded nice and that it's good to go out with good friends. Ju-ai started doubting whether she even wanted to be there. Her mom told her, if it's not fun or the vibe isn't right, just drink a little and go home early. Ju-ai sighed, agreed, and said she really wanted to go home. After a short silence, Ju-ai asked her mom if she happened to have 200 million won. Then she laughed and said she was just asking. Her mom playfully answered, "Of course I do." Ju-ai blinked. Did she hear that right? Her mom repeated it. "Of course I do." Ju-ai said maybe she misheard and asked where she got so much. Her mom said she went to a community meeting. She explained it was a neighborhood gathering with people she'd known for over 10 years. Ju-ai said, "Wow, Mom, you're the coolest." Then her mom went on saying she'd gone to Wando Island, where there were tons of seaweed, so she bought a bunch. I couldn't believe she actually bought seaweed. Her mom asked, "Weren't you asking about seaweed?" Then someone's voice in the background asked who she was talking to. Mom said it was Ju-ai, and that their daughter must really want seaweed soup. "No, Mom, I was asking about the money, not seaweed," the girl thought. Her mom said she'd send her a package tomorrow, since her daughter must be craving seaweed so badly she's asking about it in the middle of the night. Ju-ai sighed. What money, really? Her parents were worrying about her while she was losing her mind over everything. Mom told her to just cook the seaweed with beef or shrimp. I said okay and thought, God, I'm pathetic. She thanked her mom and said she really did want seaweed soup. She told her mom and dad she loved them and hung up. After the call, she had no excuse left. She knew she had to go back. And then she saw a strange man standing right in front of her. Back at the cafe, Ho Hui-jo offered Junwon a drink but told him to hand over his card first in case he got too drunk. The director ignored him. The man was thinking about the girl. She'd been gone a while. Why hadn't she come back yet? Was it because of the talk about the broken watch? The girl had said a stalker had been following her for weeks. Did Junwon wondered if something had happened? The guy at the table asked why Ju-ai still hadn't returned, but her friend said she'd just gone to the bathroom. After a while, Bori started to get worried and tried calling her. She called again and again, but I didn't answer. Did Junwon felt his irritation grow? He finally stood up and went outside, trying to call her too, but she didn't pick up. Where could she have gone, he thought. He paced nervously outside the cafe, still calling. There was no way she'd just disappear for no reason. But then a man's voice answered. Damn it, the man growled. Junwon asked who he was. He couldn't make sense of it. The man raised his voice, demanding to know who picked up her phone. He froze when he realized it was a man. Junwon asked, Isn't this Hongju-ai's phone? The man answered yes and shouted why the hell he keeps getting calls at such a late hour asking Ju-ai? He shouted that she was messing up his work and told them to show their faces already, those bastards. Junwon asked where he was. The man shot back, "Why should I tell you?" Junwon asked again. The man yelled into the phone, telling him to get over there already, because he was ready for a serious talk. The man said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I said. You're bastard," then rushed outside. As Hong Juai was leaving the restroom, she ran into two random guys who asked if she was okay. She replied that she was fine. Then she started laughing. She'd been so scared of those guys that she actually screamed. Walking out of the store, the girl thought that when she got back to the cafe, she'd ask the director if he'd really called her and act surprised that someone else answered. Then she decided she'd say she changed her number a week ago and that he probably called the old one. Perfect, she thought. That's exactly what I'll tell him. Entering the cafe, she thought she didn't really look like some kind of scammer. Then she ran up to her friends and cheerfully shouted that she'd bought ice cream. A Choi Kyung-eun stood up and asked where she'd been. The girl explained she went to buy ice cream and the store turned out to be far away. Then Bori asked why she hadn't answered her calls, and the girl said she was on the phone with her mom when she called. Her friend started crying, and the girl told her not to cry because of her, apologized for making her worry, and explained that her phone battery had died. Then I asked the director if he'd called her by any chance, but when she turned around, she noticed he wasn't there. She asked where the director was, but Ho Huijo, who sat next to him, looked surprised and asked why he hadn't shown up yet. Her friends told her they thought the director was with her, since both of them had left one after another and hadn't returned for a while. The girl got upset and said that was impossible, and the guy asked where their director had gone. He called the director, asked where he was, and told him they were worried since he'd been gone for a long time. Then the guy was surprised to hear the director had called a taxi and asked why. The director explained he was trying to get to Paju. The girl was confused. Paju? Why would he go there so late at night? What happened? She thought, why go so far at this hour? Could it be things actually worked out with that girl from Blind Date? At first, her friends wanted to call the police, but then they thought, why? The girl asked, wasn't he just meeting someone? Then Do Junwon told the guy someone had been kidnapped, and he asked, surprised, who exactly? The director explained that Ju-ai had been kidnapped. The guy asked him where exactly that happened. While the girl was stunned, they were talking about her. The director said some man had kidnapped her. Huicho tried to ask more questions, but the director hung up. The guy thought, what is he talking about? She's right here. He asked the girl if she had given the director her phone number since he kept saying she'd been kidnapped and wasn't making any sense. The girl pulled out her phone and thought about what he was saying. She hadn't gotten any calls. Then she couldn't figure out which number he'd even dialed since he didn't know her number. Then it hit her. He must have called her old number. And now some guy owned it. She rushed outside and saw Do Junwon standing by the curb, phone in hand, calling a taxi. Then she saw him getting into the cab, started running fast, and shouted, "Taxi!" trying to stop him. As she ran across the street, she thought, God, I'm such an idiot. Of course he'd call the old number. Who knows who answered or why he's going so far? Then she yelled his name loudly, telling him to stay right where he was. The man was standing by the curb as the taxi pulled up. He quickly moved toward the car. The girl kept running, trying to stop him, yelling for him not to get in the car, but he didn't hear her. She ran down the road, screaming for him to stop, but the taxi drove off and she couldn't catch up. The driver looked in the rearview mirror and muttered that this was typical. People drink too much and start acting weird. Then the driver looked at the guy and asked if he knew the woman chasing the car. The director turned around, confused, and said she seemed crazy. The driver replied that it looked like she was running after their cab. The girl kept running with everything she had, shouting for the car to stop. She was exhausted, but she didn't quit. Finally, the taxi driver pulled over. Do Junwon got out of the car, and they went to a nearby park, sitting on a bench under a big street lamp. The man apologized, then looked at the phone number and asked if it wasn't hers. She explained it used to be her number, but now it belonged to some stranger. She said she'd changed it a week ago and still wasn't used to it. The man was surprised and asked if that's why she kept giving out the old number. She told him it wasn't on purpose. She just dialed it out of habit. Junwon pulled out his phone and asked for her new number. She took out her phone and happily agreed to give him her new number. The man dialed it, but there was no signal. She smiled and said her battery had died. Tilting her head slightly, she apologized and said she'd probably ruined his mood. Then she added that she'd make up for all the trouble she'd caused. The man looked at her seriously and said, "Of course you will." She apologized again. Then Ju-ai grabbed her phone and he looked surprised, asking why. She explained she'd give him her email so when the repair bill was ready, or if he needed anything else, he could message her anytime. She smiled and said she'd read the message and reply right away. The man thought she was trying to settle things peacefully. Then he showed her the bruise on his arm and asked what he should do about it. What if she disappeared again after leaving just her contact info? The girl flinched in fear. She didn't even know what to say when she saw the bruise on his arm. She told him she couldn't quit her job and run away. But the man replied that she already had something like that on her record. Then the girl suggested a plan. She'd text him every morning to prove she hadn't disappeared or changed her number. The man's expression changed, and he asked if she really wanted his day to start with her messages. Then the girl suggested sending him a message at a set time, maybe around 3 p.m. The man was surprised at first and didn't know what to say, but then he agreed since there wasn't really another option. But then he suggested they set a time limit on how long this would last, and she agreed. It was a beautiful sunny morning. The weather was amazing, the birds were singing their sweet songs, and the girls were hurrying to work. Sitting in the car, the girl asked her colleague Bori if she had done anything stupid yesterday while drunk. Her friend said she didn't know because she hadn't seen anything, but when she went to take a shower, she never came out. The girl laughed, realizing that's why she woke up on the bathroom floor. Her friend said, thank God she wasn't paralyzed, because once the director Du left, she started drinking a lot. Then Bori asked if anything happened to her, but she said she'd just relaxed and drank, knowing she'd be staying over. Later, her friend asked if anything happened between her and the director, and she said as far as she remembered, nothing did. Then the girl started telling her friend how last night the guy had walked her down the street back to the restaurant. They walked side by side, but both were silent. The silence was so awkward that the girl thought it would have been more comfortable to walk separately. She slowed down, and when the man walked a little ahead, he turned around, looked at her, and waited for her to catch up. They walked together again, and she thought maybe she didn't have to do that. As they reached the cafe, she asked Junwon if he could drink. He gave her a strange look and said he didn't know. Then she asked if he had ever gotten drunk because he looked pretty strong, but he said he didn't know because he'd never drunk before. He asked her if she really drank until she got drunk, and she answered, "Is that even possible?" Then he opened the cafe door for her and wished her a good drink today. She was surprised. Why today? And why did it sound so specific? So nothing happened last night, the girl told her friend, then said she'd get out of the car nearby. She said that was fine. Bori wondered why she wanted to get out there, since there was a nice cafe next to the pharmacy too. But Ju-ai said it was nice weather, and she wanted to walk, telling her friend to go ahead. She'd bring her some good coffee. Fine, her friend said, ordering an Einspanner, and told her not to pick something weird like she usually did. The girl quickly got out of the car, repeated the name of the coffee her friend wanted, and ran to the cafe. As she walked in, she greeted the staff, then started thinking about what she should order for herself. At first, she thought she shouldn't go to the cafe next to the pharmacy because the director might come, and they'd run into each other again. Then she placed her order: 2 hot Americanos, 1 iced latte, 1 hot latte, and some bagel sandwiches. After ordering, she turned around and saw Junwon, who had also come to get coffee. She was shocked to see him there, and he clearly didn't expect to see her either. She thought it hadn't even been a full day, and they'd already run into each other again. But it was fine. She'd already apologized. She asked if he got home safely last night, and he nodded. Then she thought all that was left was to set things straight. She couldn't afford to seem too soft. Then the cashier repeated her order, saying she'd ordered 5 sandwiches and 4 coffees. The girl suddenly remembered she hadn't ordered what Bori had asked for. She realized she'd forgotten the Einspanner for her friend and quickly added it. After all, she'd promised to bring her a good coffee. When she placed the order, it felt like she was floating in space. Then she realized she'd said the wrong name for the coffee. She started saying, "No, not Einstein, Einspanner," and fixed her order. She blushed. The man was right there, and she didn't want to look like a fool. Then the cashier apologized, saying their cafe didn't make Einspanner. The girl asked why. She got really upset and almost cried, but then the cashier suggested she order something else. Ju-ai got flustered and ordered a hot Americano, but then changed her mind and asked for it iced. They double-checked if she really wanted iced Americano, and she said yes, that's exactly what she meant. She turned away, thinking how awful that whole exchange was, and why she'd even said Einstein out loud. Then she heard her name and felt the man lightly grab her by the shoulder, asking if she was even looking where she was going. She quickly grabbed her order, thanked him, and thought how embarrassing this was. Then Junwon came closer and asked if she could carry all that by herself. She looked at him in surprise. She quickly grabbed everything and said, "What's so hard about it?" Of course I can, and said goodbye. Junwon picked up his coffee, looked at her as she walked away, and told her to be careful. What was that? She thought. Why did he freeze for a second? Did he want to say something else? She thought maybe when he asked if she was okay carrying everything, he was actually offering to help. If that's the case, he should have said it more clearly. Stepping outside, the girl told herself to stop thinking about him. Then she heard someone hurrying to catch up to her. She couldn't tell who was calling her. What a weird place to run into someone, a guy said. It's the first time we've seen each other since high school. Then he asked how Juseok was doing. She recognized him. He was a sunbae from the high school Juseok briefly attended. His name was Hwang Dae-shik. After he saw her at Juseok's entrance ceremony, he'd bugged the guy for a whole year, saying he'd fallen in love with his sister at first sight. He used to say he'd make her his girlfriend. Joy was confused and asked why her. She couldn't understand it. Then, along with her answer, the guy screamed and started ripping off his uniform, shirt, and tie. After that incident, he earned the nickname the Naked Screecher. So when she was in school, she didn't dare step out of the dorm and focus solely on her studies. The guy said that after graduation, she completely disappeared from contact, so he went after her to Seoul, and finally they met. The girl said she had coffee in her hands, so she couldn't shake his hand. The guy said she should have said something so he could take the coffee. Then he asked how she was doing and mentioned he'd heard she worked at a pharmacy. He asked if she worked nearby and had become a pharmacist, but then said there wasn't the place to talk about it. Strange, the guy said. Out of all people, such a beauty immediately caught my eye. The moment I saw you, I ran after you. He said she shouldn't think it was hard for him at all. He actually loved chasing after her, then laughed. The girl grabbed her coffee and said she had to go. He asked her to leave her number and invited her to lunch, but the girl pretended she didn't hear him. He replied that, as she could see, he wasn't the same Hwang Dae-shik anymore. He wasn't being pushy, just happy to see her. He pulled out his phone and asked for her number again, but the girl thought, first the stalker, then the guy with the watch, and now this one. If she could fend off all this trouble, maybe she'd win the lottery next. Then she wondered whether to have lunch with the dressed-up Hwang Dae-shik or see the Naked Screecher. Junwon drove by, saw the girl with some guy, and was surprised, wondering what was going on. He sat in the car for a long time, unable to understand who this guy with Ju-ai was or what was really happening. The girl gave the guy a very stern look and said she had to leave because she was running late. Dae-shik extended his phone again, asking her to leave her number before going, since they really hadn't seen each other in a long time. Junwon thought to himself that some strange guy had attached himself, but he wouldn't interfere. He didn't want to get dragged into shady business again. He needed to go. Hong Ju-ai first pressed her lips together, then started laughing, saying, "All right, give me your phone," and called him Appa. Junwon heard her call him Appa. No matter how she tried to handle the situation, she called him Appa. Then he got out of the car. Then Junwon slowly approached them and asked what they were doing. He didn't understand who this guy to the girl was. Ju-ai was very surprised to see Do Junwon, then asked why he hadn't left yet. Hwang Dae-shik grabbed the girl's hand and asked who Junwon was and if she knew him, but she didn't know how to answer. Junwon told the guy to let her go, but he said he was just happy to see a fellow hometown girl, and the man was interfering. The girl asked if he saved her number, and the guy showed his phone and said of course he had. Then the girl looked at Junwon and he asked if she wasn't going to work. She said of course she was, but she was busy now. Junwon offered her a ride in his car, saying they were going the same way. The girl wondered why he decided to give her a lift. Hwang Dae-shik told the man that he was talking to the girl and that he was ruining the whole mood by interfering. Do Junwon said the guy was clinging on the street, whining, and called that a conversation. The guy got very angry, asking where the man was getting involved since he and Ju-ai had known each other for a long time. Then the girl got angry and asked what was wrong with them. Hwang Dae-shik asked if he was Ju-ai's boyfriend or something. The girl was confused and looked at Junwon. Suddenly the man answered, "What if I am?" Then the girl thought she couldn't let Hwang Dae-shik grab the phone and shouted for him to stop. She grabbed his hand tightly, the one holding the phone, and he yelled at her to let go, asking who that guy was to act like that. Without letting go, she shouted for him to stop because that Junwon was her. Junwon wanted to say that he was her boyfriend. Then Ju-ai started yelling for Dae-shik Oppa to apologize because he had no idea who he was dealing with. Dae-shik saw that the girl was furious, started trembling, and couldn't say anything else. Then the girl started explaining that she'd spent all those years shedding liters of sweat and tears. And that's why she had risen to such a position, because she dreamed of meeting this person And this person in their company was above the heavens. Incredible. First in performance in 10 years with 3 diamonds. This guy was the sales king of the month. In short, their idol. Junwon looked at the girl, not understanding what she was talking about, but she just blushed while looking at him. The girl didn't know how to explain, then said that the number she gave him was in Kakao Talk. The guy looked at his phone, found her number, and asked what it was. Was that pyramid scheme? The girl continued, saying she didn't work at a pharmacy. When she came to this city, she studied hard, found a nice place, and got a job there. She said she left pharmacy right after university, and the guy was very surprised to hear that. Then she made a concerned face and said he should listen. It'd be interesting for him too, since they were hometown buddies. She continued, saying how great it was that she was a mid-level manager, so she could sell only water purifiers and heated mats. Then she looked at Junwon and said, "Here's our superhero. Stone beds, air purifiers, even massage chairs. He could handle it all." Then she winked and asked if he'd buy a filter from her. The guy flinched a little. Daeshik didn't understand what she was talking about, but she said he should know he was insanely lucky. It was really hard to buy such a functional item at that price. Junwon was shocked, not understanding how she could lie so easily, but she smiled and shouted to Daeshik that this was his chance. "But not here," she yelled, grabbing his hand. "Since you wanted this yourself, let's have lunch and talk at the same time." Then she shouted that it would take too long to explain and that he should just follow her. But Daeshik was trembling and trying to pull his hand away, which the girl held tightly. Then the guy stepped back a little and told Juai to calm down. But she said her heart was racing and there were discounts on laundry detergent and bedding right now. Then he pulled out his phone and said to wait a second, asking if it was really her, showing a profile picture. But the girl said, "Who else could it be if not me?" Daeshik started getting very nervous and broke out in a cold sweat, then asked if it really was her. Junwon just stared at him silently. Then the girl grabbed Junwon by the sleeve, looking at him with mischievous eyes as if asking, "Is this right?" Junwon couldn't refuse the girl, whose eyes were shining with joy and nodded in agreement. Daeshik was completely shocked. The girl holding Junwon's sleeve smiled and thanked him. She asked Daeshik if he knew what was important right now and that from this moment she would change his life 180 degrees. But he denied it. Then Daeshik said he'd completely forgotten and had things to do, so he'd call later, but the girl said he would just leave because they had so many products to try. He refused and asked if her parents knew, but then said she should send his regards to Yuseok, her brother. The girl said it was such a shame, and if he was in the area, he should call. Daeshik replied that it was unlikely since he usually wasn't around there. The girl waved her hand and said if he called, she would come herself. But the guy, scared, said there was no need to go. He turned and quickly walked away. He thought about how much she could change and still get tangled up in a pyramid scheme. Hongjui smiled and shouted after him that she didn't understand what he said. Probably ordered a water filter. The guy ran down the street without looking back, and the girl thought the naked screecher hadn't changed at all. The girl was very pleased with herself, took a sip of her refreshing coffee, and Junwon just stood there watching her. Junwon asked the girl why she wasn't carrying the coffee and wondered how she could even think of that, though it wasn't exactly praise. The girl winked and said it was a natural talent she couldn't hide, then smiled. She asked the director why he said he was her boyfriend. Junwon pondered, then asked when he had said that. Juai turned and said she heard he was about to say he was her boyfriend, but he truly couldn't understand what she meant. They looked at each other with very tender eyes, and the girl asked the director if he liked her. The girl asked again if he really liked her. He replied that it was absolutely impossible. Didn't he already say that it wasn't so? Then the girl said that's why you shouldn't meddle in other people's affairs or take sides. The world is scary these days. You might get hurt helping someone. Then she said that if the person you help misinterprets your intentions, thinking you have feelings for them, the man thought this was coming from the one who made him the head of the pyramid scheme. Then Junwon asked if that guy would go and tell her parents because, as it seemed, they were from the same hometown. The girl replied that his parents lived far away, so everything was fine, very far from her home. Then she said that no matter what, she was grateful to him, said goodbye, and that it was time for her to go. And then the man saw that it was really hard for the girl to carry the coffee and offered her a ride. She exhaled and thought it really was heavy. The man walked to the car, opened the door, and politely offered her a seat. He really wanted to help her. The girl agreed, thinking their relationship couldn't get any better, but there was no need to make it worse. They drove through the morning city with many cars around, and Junwon stopped at a traffic light. A car stopped behind them with some girls inside. One turned to Haewon, asking if she saw the car ahead and if that was a pharmacist from the first floor. The girls wondered if Director Do was dating a pharmacist since they saw them together. "How cute," said one girl. "It seems like they like each other." Hwan looked at them, confused. When they drove past, Jihye said why he had pretended not to be interested in women. And she told Hwan that she seemed to be on his radar too because she was beautiful, like a celebrity, popular at work, and people liked her. There's no way he wasn't interested in her. Then Jihye thought her friend was very beautiful but had a nasty character. So by interacting with her, she would gain followers and become popular, helping her rise. Hwan thought he acted like he wasn't interested in dating, then was charmed by a fox-like woman. What a jerk. The girl turned to her friend and asked if she saw everything. Jihye didn't understand what exactly, and the girl asked if maybe they weren't dating. "Of course," replied the friend. "Maybe not." Hwan said she didn't care. The girl just had no pride. Looking at the man, Hwan said it was obvious he didn't have feelings for her, and she felt sorry for the girl. She turned to Jihye and said she was probably very interested in their relationship and smiled. Hwan suggested to her friend to go check on them. Jihye was very surprised and didn't know what to say. Entering the pharmacy, Jihye saw Ju-ai working, looking very tired. The girl was offering ointment to a man. Then Ju-ai was invited to lunch. She agreed and suggested going to change first. Jung-eun suggested she eat well since she looked a bit tired, and the girl happily went to lunch. While changing, the girl wondered why her friend said she looked tired. Then she looked in the mirror and asked, "Ina, has her face been this gloomy all morning?" The friend was confused and didn't know how to respond. While Ju-ai looked at herself in the mirror, her friend said she thought it was due to yesterday's drinking. Ju-ai replied it wasn't the alcohol. It was because she got into that guy's car, then thought she should have walked with coffee even 1,000 blocks. Who knew it would be so quiet in the car, it was almost uncomfortable to breathe. If only she knew he wouldn't even turn on the radio. She felt déjà vu from last night. Then the girl, laughing, asked the man if everyone at their workplace really liked Americano. Junwon replied that he bought it without asking, because if he asked, everyone would order a different coffee. There was completely silent in the car again, and being next to the man made her feel awkward, so when she got out and said goodbye, it felt like she was trying to escape. Meanwhile, at the pharmacy, a pharmacist approached Jihye and asked what she was looking for and which medicine she needed. Jihye was initially flustered, biting her finger, then ordered a bandage and lens solution. Then Jihye turned and saw Ju-ai enter the pharmacy, and she even started to tremble a little at the sight. The girl was a bit nervous, not knowing how to start a conversation, and then asked if the girl was planning to go to lunch. Ju-ai wondered what was happening since she wasn't in her work uniform, which meant she wasn't coming from the hospital of this building. The girl asked Jihye what she was interested in, if she needed anything, and if she could help find something. But the girl asked if Ju-ai didn't remember her since she worked on the 12th floor. The client said she had bought medicine from her last week and the week before. The girl replied that she hadn't even had time to look at today's clients and was completely overwhelmed with work. The client quietly whispered to herself that she didn't think it was about being busy, and pondered it. Jihye said she greeted her because she visited often and thought the girl would remember her. Ju-ai exhaled and wondered why she was telling her this. Jihye said that, by the way, she saw her in the morning getting into a car. The girl looked at her, surprised. The girl smiled and asked if it was probably her boyfriend's car since it looked very luxurious. Ju-ai replied that it wasn't her boyfriend, then leaned slightly and asked if she hadn't noticed the car's owner. Jihye was initially confused, but then said she really hadn't noticed. The girl asked if that was really the case. The girl thought it was strange since she got in the car first and he got in afterward. The car's tinted windows made it unlikely she could have seen him. The client replied she probably didn't see him. Ju-ai frowned, thinking she seemed to understand the situation. The client was curious about Director Do. Then Kyung-eun approached and told her to go to lunch while she would handle things herself. The girl left but heard her colleague ask the client what she was looking for in the pharmacy. The client replied she didn't need anything at all. Once outside, the girl asked her friend if she remembered that woman, but Ina asked if she even knew how many people came to the pharmacy. The friend said that with prescriptions, a passport photo isn't needed, so it was strange to ask. She guessed the woman liked the director and was scouting him out. Ju-ai thought he was already the king of their building, and most likely, she wasn't the client's target. The friend said that was probably true and added she would have a headache if she got involved with him. Then the girl heard her phone ring, and looking at the screen, she saw it was Director Do calling. Looking at the phone screen, the girl wondered if he was a ghost, as the phone kept ringing. She stopped in the middle of the street, looked up, and wondered if he had heard their conversation. The girl picked up, and at first it was completely silent, but then the director said it was good that she answered. The girl was surprised why he called. Junwon said he was checking if she would answer the call and was about to finish the conversation. He hung up, and the girl couldn't figure out what had just happened. Her friend also asked what had happened. Ju-ai stared at her phone for a long time, very flustered, then wondered why this was happening to her. Exactly at 3 a.m., the man's phone rang. He was fast asleep but had to wake up. Looking at the screen, he saw many messages from Hong Ju-ai. The girl wrote to him that she had said he could trust her. She could even imagine his surprised expression right now. How could he think that she would deceive him and run away? She even felt a little hurt. She had worked so hard to become a pharmacist, and when she got in, her dad even hung a poster to celebrate. She wrote that she wouldn't quit, would earn money and repay him, so he could be at ease. Even though she earned like an ant, the day would come when she could pay off the watch. And until then, she would work diligently. The girl added a Dobby-free elf emoji. Then she wished him a good day. And with that, the 3 o'clock fairy from the first floor took her leave. After reading all the messages, Junwon jumped out of bed, not understanding what had happened to her. The 3 o'clock fairy, the man thought. Did she even have a sense of self-sufficiency to talk about herself like that? Judging from the messages, he hoped she wrote them while drunk. Then he read a message where the girl wrote that he probably got upset because of her. She was sorry, she wouldn't run away, and would write according to their agreement at the same time every day. Then wished him a good day, even if she sent messages at 3 a.m. 3 o'clock p.m. had become 3 a.m., the man thought, holding his head. If she wasn't trying to get on his nerves, it must have been a timer error on the message. Then the girl sent a cheerful emoji, and he thought, could she really send something like that? Junwon wondered if this was even her style. It seemed the woman who sent this messages didn't know what was happening and was sound asleep. Looking at the phone, he thought it was the fairy and hung up, wondering where she was looking. The next day, Junwon went to the pharmacy where the girl worked, planning to see her. He took his phone and called her, but she wasn't at her desk, which surprised him greatly. Then the girl picked up and the man asked if she slept well. She was surprised, and he asked again if she really slept well. Ju-ai said she slept well and was surprised the director called her in the morning. Junwon thought she probably didn't know what time she sent the message and wondered how she would react, asking where she was since she wasn't in the pharmacy. The girl was surprised he was at the pharmacy and said she had stepped out for a moment. The man thought she sent that message, but who knew if she would behave like last time. Ju-ai asked if it was urgent because she was busy. The man asked if she really didn't know anything. The girl replied quite frankly that she had no idea what had happened. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this story and what manhwa you'd like to see next. See you in the next installment.